Gain increased ground clearance and aggressive good looks with Rough Country's 3.5-inch Series 2 suspension lift kit for the Jeep Wrangler. This all-inclusive, easy-to-install kit comes with everything you need to enhance off-road performance while running up to 35-inch tires, and features a 100% bolt-on installation process that's easy to complete with common tools in a home garage. Before you begin installation, review the included instructions and make sure you have all the required parts and hardware before proceeding. You'll also want to verify that you have all the proper tools before disassembling your vehicle. For more helpful tips to follow before beginning installation, visit www.roughcountry.com/beforeyoulift. To begin installation, remove the wheels and tires. Remove the bolt securing the front track bar to the axle, retaining the stock hardware. Remove the bottom sway bar bolts. Remove the top sway bar link, retaining hardware for later use. Remove the lower shock bolt, retaining the stock hardware. Unbolt the top of the shock and remove. On some models, it will be necessary to remove the brake line bracket from the frame to allow the coils to be removed. Lower the axle to allow room for the coils to be removed and remove the stock coil springs, retaining the stock coil isolators. Remove the lower control arm bolts at the axle and frame, retaining the stock hardware for reuse. Install the new control arms in the frame side mount with the stock hardware. Install the arm onto the axle with the stock hardware. Place the supplied bump stop on the lower coil seat. Mark and drill a hole using a 3/8 drill bit. Be sure the factory rubber isolators are in place and install the front coil springs with the bump stop pugs. Install the coil into the upper tower first, followed by the lower seat. Be sure the coils are rotated so that they seat properly. Secure the bump stop to the drilled hole in the lower seat using the supplied hardware and tighten. Remove the tie rod end from the pitman arm. Remove the pitman arm nut. A pitman arm puller will be needed to remove the factory pitman arm. Lightly lube pitman arm splines and install the new pitman arm with the stock hardware. Reinstall the drag link on the new pitman arm with the stock nut. Install the bushings and sleeves into the shocks. Position the stem washer and the stem bushing on the stem end of the shock and insert the stem into the upper shock tower. Install the remaining bushing and washer, secure using the supplied nut, and tighten until the bushing swells slightly. Attach the lower end of the shock to the axle and secure using the stock hardware. Remove the stock stabilizer from the axle and tie rod mount. Install the track bar bracket on the shock mount. Install the crush sleeve with the stock hardware. Install the supplied U-bolt and nuts in the bracket. Install the hardware in the new bracket and supplied stabilizer bracket in the far left holes. Drill the rear mount using a 3/8 drill bit and install the supplied hardware. Measure and mark 1.5 inches from the tie rod bracket's original location. Loosen the tie rod bracket, move the bracket 1.5 inches, and rotate the tie rod bracket to allow full stroke of the stabilizer cylinder. With the body of the stabilizer on the axle mount, install the factory stabilizer in the new mount using stock hardware. Install the stock track bar into the new track bar bracket using the supplied hardware. Remove the factory rear sway bar links. Install the factory rear sway bar links in place of the factory front sway bar links. Attach the swivel end of the link to the factory sway bar using the stock hardware, and line up the eye end of the link to the factory mount on the axle and attach again using factory hardware. Install the brake line bracket using the stock hardware. Install the stock brake line on the other end of the bracket using the supplied hardware. Moving on to the rear of the vehicle, remove the track bar bolt at the axle and secure the track bar out of the way. Loosen the bolts securing the lower control arms to both the axle and frame. Unbolt the brake hose bracket at the frame, retaining the hardware for reuse. Remove and discard the rear shocks, retaining the stock hardware. Remove the differential vent hose from the inner fender on the passenger side. Lower the axle enough to remove the stock coil springs. Install the rear coil correction spacers. Install the supplied rear coil springs. Place the rear track bar bracket on the factory mount and install into the factory holes using the supplied hardware. Using the track bar bracket as a template, mark and drill a hole in the top of the original track bar mount. Install supplied hardware through the drilled hole from the top. Insert the supplied sleeve inside the factory track bar mount. Insert the supplied bolt through the bracket, factory mount, and sleeve and secure using a supplied washer and nut. Install the factory track bar with the supplied hardware, ensuring that the head of the bolt is on the front by the coil spring. Insert the sway bar link sleeves into the sway bar link bushings. Using the supplied hardware, install the sway bar links to the sway bar and axle mount, making sure the bolts are installed with the head of the bolt toward the tires. Install the bump stop spacers on the axle and secure with the supplied hardware. Install the supplied bushings and sleeves into the rear shocks and install the rear shocks onto the vehicle using the factory hardware. Attach the brake line bracket to the location on the frame where the factory bracket was attached using factory hardware and secure the factory bracket to the bottom hole of the relocation bracket using the supplied hardware. Reinstall the wheels and tires. Once on the ground, tighten the front and rear lower control arms. Adjust the front drag link to center the steering wheel before driving by loosening the two bolts, turning the adjustment collar, and retightening once the steering wheel is centered. After installing any suspension component, it is advised that you have a qualified alignment center give your vehicle a proper alignment immediately. Have questions? Visit roughcountry.com or an authorized Rough Country dealer to learn more.